Welcome everybody to the show. We got Gordon Bowden with us again. We're lucky to have him for an update. It's been a few months since he's been on, so it'd be great to catch up. How are things, Gordon?
No, fine. I'm making a lot of money doing this promotion work.
Oh, I don't know whether to go there or not.
Just laugh it off, pal.
Oh, just so hey, listen. All right, then hands up time. Just for the just for the listeners, and a bit of a confession. There was a misunderstanding yesterday where I was waiting all day for Gordon to phone me, but there was no phone call. So I went to bed in a jolly mood and woke up this morning. I woke up this morning and threw a few toys out of the pram. But hey, listen, these things happen, and it resulted in I said, "Hey, what we got to effing pay you now? We are what?" I've given Gordon a lashing, and also I got to thank David as well for patching it back up again, because I did wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and that's what happens sometimes.
Well, it's British Telecom, and your server, and I found even with my my pay-as-you-go EE phone, which used to be orange, is that sometimes I'll get, "You have another voice message," and that message was from 2 months ago. It's just been delivered. So, EE is not the best provider when it comes to updated software for passing on messages that are left on your answering machine. So you probably find you'll get it in about, I don't know, June.
Yeah, most likely, mate. Yeah. But, so we've had a release of a little video from the anonymous group in North Wales. Now, that seemed to have done the rounds a bit, and I know that you would like to, and I would personally like to thank the lads from Anonymous for putting that together. It's
brilliant, and I'd like to thank them and pass the message on. I've passed it on to Mitchell Anthony as well in Anonymous London, who runs the Aspire network, because they were the ones that gave me an opportunity to put it on video through Aspire when I did the 1st of March, St. David's Day chat outside on Trafalgar Square, and then we went on to the BBC. So that's been a catalyst for documenting forensic evidence where it was recorded. I went into the BBC and they've done nothing. And I know why they've done nothing, because it implicates their very top executives. And I'll tell you why. Is that when I went into the BBC and I pulled that travel bag with me, inside there were 4 large files. One of them was the Andrea Davison court case copy of one of the presented N265 full disclosure files. And in there it lists her whole network of money laundering mechanisms and addresses in the United Kingdom. And Vancouver, Canada, British Virgin Islands, Panama. What it does in the court case file is disclose the wider network to which she operates for. Do you understand?
Yep.
And that's what Andrea Davison took the defamation case out for. She didn't want it in the public domain, because once it goes in the court, it's a registered public document, and it stays there within the court forever. Do you understand? In their records file.
Yeah.
So what they hoped, or what she hoped, and the people that she works for, was to eradicate all that information from any public record, to bring forth prosecutions for other people who she works for. And they are the higher echelons, including many members of the House of Lords, MPs, who operate within the wider system of Freemason lodges. And that's where it goes. It actually can be proven, like Lord William Hall. If he wants to contradict it, he can do, because one thing I'm very good at is forensic document recovery. And Lord William Hall is a liveryman at Painters Hall in 8 Little Trinity Lane, London. And 8 Little Trinity Lane, or it used to be called Painters and Stainers, and it's a Masonic lodge. Do you understand? So he's a liveryman at that address, And out of that address are the directors of Anglesey Mining in their companies, including Phoenix Mining PLC, or say there's many companies to which Ian Cuthbertson is a director, and many other, Dinesh Kumar Varma of Anglesey Mining PLC. So that's the way you trace. If you can then trace individual directors who are running virtual mining companies to the same address, and then expand on that by recovering all the other companies that operate out of that Masonic Lodge, what you then see is a generalized picture. Do you understand?
Yes.
You see a bigger picture than what is presented other than one company name with a board of directors. What you see is a network of companies, all with the same board of directors, who are playing musical chairs within a group of companies. And all they're doing is moving in and out of companies from a common address. And that's how I said, once you understand the mechanics of how it operates, it's very easy. And this is what they don't want in the public domain, because there would be riots in the streets. Now, I don't want riots in the streets. I want these people to face the same prosecution as if they catch somebody urinating in the street. It needs to be exposed for what it is, and it's billion-pound organised crime. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oof, and a bit on the side. Now,
more than a bit.
Now, just for the listeners, because we went through quite a lot of information there in a very short time. Basically, because I understand it, and most of the people listening to it would understand it, but for the people who are hearing this for the first time, this Andrea Davison woman and how she connects and how it all went to Anglesey Mining and how it all intertwines with these Masonic lodges is key in understanding how the whole fraud is used to asset strip the nation, basically, or
That's right.
And now, could you just go into the little mechanics to help people understand how we have this woman, Andrea Davison, running around. She's been found guilty by a court of law. She's giving interviews all over Europe. She's connected highly with Peter Hain, provable fact, the documents there.
And Lord Douglas Hoyle is the main. Lord Douglas Hoyle is the link then to the 17.8 million, which is the money trail to the 3 missing nukes. Simple. Because if you look in the highest forensic evidence document-wise you can get is Hansard, which is a record of questions and answers at the Prime Minister's question time. Do you understand that?
Yes, Gordon. I just need to let the listeners digest what we're going through, because you mentioned nuclear warheads, and because we've gone straight into the deep end, and we're going to stay in the deep end for this interview, is to go back and listen to Gordon's previous work to get a fuller grasp of what we're talking about. They'll have to go back and do a little bit of research. But if you can give them a little bit, Gordon, then we'll crack on.
All right. So let's do the reference to Andrea Davison. Now, I traced certain companies to 788, 790 Finchley Road that were linked to my partner's fraud, to which she and over 800 other South African victims lost a collective total of about $113 million US. They were the victims of an orchestrated capital venture fraud, and the origins of that came out of two addresses in the city of London. One was 5 Harley Place, London, Harley Street, London, and the companies that were formed there, to which my partner was the victim of, were previously registered at 788, 790 Finchley Road. So what I did do back in 2002 was I traced that common origin address of 5 Harley Place, Harley Street, London, and I dismantled the directors who control that address and their companies that they control. And I found out that there were 113 companies operated out of 5 Harley Place, Harley Street, that were all registered previously at 788, 790 Finchley Road. So I had an origin. Do you understand? I had an origin to where all these companies were formed by a certain group of complicit directors that were linked to international fraud. Then what I did was I then started to peel back each of those companies and run the reference of that Finchley Road address, and found out that there were billion-pound organised crime networks that used companies at that address, including Silvero Berlusconi and the Mafia, and the husband of Tessa Jowl MP. You know, if you look at Jowgate, and you come up with David Mackenzie Donald Mills, and he was convicted in the Italian courts for setting up shell companies that were linked to mafia money laundering and money laundering for Silvero Berlusconi, who has been convicted of fraud. Do you understand? So I had a common address back in 2002, and all I've done is expand upon all the addresses and companies that are interlocked to that specific Finchley Road address. And what I did do is I followed a company which then linked to an address in Bangor. Now, that address in Bangor was Manchester House, 32 Bangor Street, Wyfell in Heli, Gwynedd, LL 56 4JD. Now, see, this is all off the head because I've been doing this for nearly 6 years. So, Andrea Davison, when I was doing a research on the internet, funnily enough, I just spotted this thing where the Derbyshire police raided a property. And it was interlocked to the same company that I was following. So what I did do is I ran her address through an internet search and came up with, there were 1 million emails sent to undisclosed recipients for dying child begging letters, romance scams, fake worthless university degrees, you know, fake gold bars, fake watches, all operating and emanating from people said to be living at that address. So then what happened was I published through Peter Eyre's weblog, Eyre International, the other references to which were not disclosed by the 2-page document that I recovered from the internet, which was a sort of panic letter by Andrea Davison to say that the Derbyshire police had raided her property, they'd seized everything of value. So what it was her 2-page declaration on the Derbyshire police raid on the 13th of the 1st, 2010, was a panic to let the people who she worked for know that she'd been raided and they'd seized everything. And 4 computers, 6 mobile phones, and all the paraphernalia that comes with a fake document factory linked to organised crime. So I just published, and so in order for Andrea Davison to protect her wider network, which she works for as an administrator, was she tried to bring out a defamation case against myself, Peter Eyre, Google Inc., the Pal Telegraph, etc., etc., etc. And she was well advised by somebody with the acumen of being able to post and set together court documents. And I found out later on that was her accomplice, and his name is Pete Sawyer, investigative journalist, because he's been involved with major cases, including politicians. You can recover a lot if you know where to look. And out of the 2-page document that I initially found on the internet, there were 7 header bars in blue. And one was House of Lords, paedophile investigations, arms to Iraq. And out of those 7 header bars, I recovered over 400 documents and personal letters from people like Tony Blair, Ken Clark, the Scott Inquiry, and Lord Douglas Hoyle. And from those letters, which some 2 were addressed, one to the Chief Constable of the North Wales Police, handwritten, and the other one was, there were 2 letters, 3 letters to, 1 letter to the Chief of the Derbyshire Police, and 2 others from Lord Doug Hoyle to Tara. Do you understand? Andrea Davison. Mm-hmm. So what I uncovered there was that there was a close association to a person that was being prosecuted for organised crime, fraud, theft and money laundering with high connections to the corridors of power. And by following through with this and then being involved in a 5-year civil case against Andrea Davison, what I've uncovered since has been laid out in a sort of story time of massive organised crime linked to senior politicians and members of the House of Lords, who all use those as common addresses in Finchley Road. So, as I said, for anybody that understands and can look up Andrea Davison, this is no angel. Make no mistake. She is no bodicea for paedophile recovery of those that commit these hideous crimes, because this woman is a very, very intelligent criminal. Very intelligent. And I'll say that openly if she wants to come back and contest it. Because when her criminal trial started on the 4th of the 7th, 2012, you might hear a bit of noise in a minute. It's Jaws coming in for a drink. What happened was she fled to Miami on the 2nd of the 7th, just prior to the commencement of her criminal trial. Now, her trial started on the 4th of July 2012, and it ended on the 25th, when she was convicted upon indictment on 26 of 27 charges of fraud. And out of those, they included possess, control, article for use in fraud, make, supply, article for use in fraud, aid and abet the making and supplying of articles for use in fraud, possess, control articles for use in fraud, and dishonestly make false representation to make gain for self and or another or cause loss. So it just goes on. There were 26 of 27 charges of fraud, and each one of those, I made a specific representation through our barrister to get the full copy used from Fraud Group North in her prosecution at the Mole Crown Court. And in that is the full description of evidence used by the police to convict her. So this has nothing to do with what she's ranting around on other shows like the David Icke Show or Richie Allen, or with Sonia Poulton, that she's an ex-arms to Iraq intelligence officer, because if she was, she's made so many mistakes, she'd be worthless as an intelligence officer. And I know I signed the Official Secrets Act. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. Is that what I have is the full statement of the offences that she committed and all the names of company directors that she claimed were living at her Manchester house, 32 Bangor Street, where she altered the census records for, falsely claiming that these people of companies lived at her address. So what I did was, over the period of 12 months, I recovered every company that operated out of there, every director that claimed to have lived there, and put together the full network of her operations, that these shell companies are then used in money laundering billions to certain people who front thousands of companies that are registered moving in and out of Limassol in Cyprus. So I have got the full disclosure, and this is what's panicking a lot of politicians. So that's where we're at today. We have a trial window, the 9th, 10th, and the 11th of February, to recover costs and expenses against Andrea Davison by way of recovering her assets that are known to me, including property, which we will do.
She's running around giving interviews willy-nilly, essentially. She's got a lot of things and a lot of high-ranking movers and shakers, Gordon, basically.
Well, if you understand where this goes, if you're trying to protect the politically aligned organised crime network, you will use every mechanism that you can to discredit those people like myself who are trying to get the truth out about how billions are stolen by organised crime that include members of the House of Lords and MPs. And my life skills as a Royal Air Force Gen Tech engineer and as a mining engineer gives me those life skills to understand how mining companies operate and the full technical background of profitable mining, hard rock, ultra-depth mining. And this is where I picked up on Andrea Davison. Among those things that were seized from her property were mining certificates. Do you understand? That she was running an investment club in Bangor, and she obviously had a load of subservient people working for her to induct investors throughout North Wales or wherever, to then bring in sucker clients to invest in these fake oil, gas and mining companies. And for myself, it was quite easy to dismantle a specific address and all those companies that operate out of it. And because I was a red-ticketed engineer for Goldfields, as you saw at Anglesey when I did that presentation, my qualifications are open to every scrutiny that you want to do. However, Miss Davison has never presented one piece of paper. Not that she can claim that everything was seized by that, because she must know people. Do you understand? If she is who she says she is, she would have witnesses to stand up in the court of law. But there was only one person that stood up in her defence, her old friend. And her old friend just happened to be Kevin James Carhill. And Kevin James Carhill was the intelligence advisor for Lord Paddy Ashdown and Gordon Brown, MP, Prime Minister. And he is currently the advisor for Lord Laird Arthur Girvan, who was caught by reporters in a sting, trying to accept money for questions. So what we have is a direct link to an organised crime network linked to the very top of the political powers that walk Westminster. I mean, you can't get any bigger than Gordon Brown or, Paddy Ashton. So they should be brought in for their association with organised crime, convicted organised crime operatives. Nothing to do with paedophile investigations, and that's what she's bantering about now. And that's a deliberate distraction method used by those people in organised crime to sort of sway against what she was actually convicted of. Because the 21-page Fraud Group North synopsis on the criminal trial is extensive and specific in naming all the accounts, all the alias names that she used, but nothing to do with paedophilia. So she's trying to gather a sort of supporter base based upon her claiming to be being convicted under a guise of her sort of arrest, while she was purportedly trying to uncover Westminster paedophile rings or linked to North Wales. But that's not the case. She's just an administrator for an organised crime system that goes to the very top of the establishment. If it was allowed to go to a public inquiry, people like David Cameron would go to jail, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, they would all go to jail, Peter Hain, every one of them. They would go to jail because Andrea Davison is a catalyst to recover her, and then dig deeper in a public inquiry, not the same as the 5-year Chilcot inquiry, but would have the same consequences worldwide, because the banks are being robbed of billions, hundreds of billions, and people like Andrea Davison have the full understanding of how it's done. Whether she will be around in 12 months' time, I have no idea, because she is an extreme danger to the establishment, because her evidence in a court of law, if she was fully interrogated, and I don't mean, waterboarding or anything like this, is to apply proper investigative disclosure by doing a full run round on what she's been up to and who she's been with. It would destroy the establishment.
That's the key. And there is so many of these dangers then for the so-called establishment floating out there at the moment. that it can only result in one way, whichever way you shake it up. They are coming down right before our eyes, Gordon.
Of course, and what I've noticed is that even if you take it in a singular company activity, like Anglesey Mining PLC, these people won't take me to court. I've begged them to take me to court, because then I can release evidence in the public gallery to what they've been up to. Because when you dismantle their financials, it shows clearly that for a company that has a classification as a mining company, they've never done any mining in 31 years. And neither of the other companies that they're involved with in Vancouver, Canada, or Sweden. You know, the Grängesberg iron ore mine, which is 3 flooded shafts that they've purchased for I don't know how much. Why didn't they ever save the money that they've gathered from investors and do what they were supposed to do at Anglesey? You understand?
Absolutely, and I would point out listeners to the in-depth interview that we done with John and Craig, Andrew, and from Anglesey, along with Gordon, specifically on Anglesey mining. It went along with the presentation as well, and that will give you a real in-depth look into the absolute corruption and the contempt in which these people treat the people of Anglesey and the people of the UK as a whole. Now, the people like Andrea Davison, who are holding these secrets that are big enough to bring down the government and the system itself, they have been so corrupt for so long. There's so many of these secrets out there that can bring them and will bring this government down. You couldn't make it up, Gordon. What are some of the most shocking things that you have found out on this trail? Because I'm sure that as you entered this rabbit hole, you'd never have thought you'd uncover this much corruption.
No.
Surely
This went beyond the security of my own family. This was a crusade. That once I understood what this was about, I had to leave things behind for my own personal forward movement of my life, and then focus on trying to get out to people like yourself or the people of the country, is to understand that this goes beyond my own personality or because of what is the truth of the filth that run this country and how it's been orchestrated over generations. And what I found is that if I followed individual fake oil, gas and mining companies that are stealing billions from banks, financial institutions, pension funds and little private investors, that these people are very senior members of the House of Lords. I mean, I'll name them on your radio show. If Lord Ian Colin or Ewing wishes to take me to court for his involvement as a paid director of Vatakula Gold Mines Limited and the multiple other companies that he's a director of, he's more than welcome, because that will then bring down people like David Anthony Lenigas, who has been running this 50 to 100 billion barrel of oil near Gatwick Airport scam under the 5 common companies, Stella Resources, which brings in the Clogau Gold Mine in North Wales. So these are all fraud scams that are stealing billions and laundering them to accounts in the British Virgin Islands, Limassol, Cyprus, where they use lower-end operatives like Andrea Davison. There's Gulf Keystone Petroleum. There's been a reference to Gulf Keystone Petroleum and a certain Conservative MP who is linked as a director of that company, which is purportedly, according to the press release, and I can back that up, is using this shell company to transport oil from ISIS-held territory into and through Turkey. Do you understand? Well, I mean, this is where my expertise is in dismantling companies, is that then you will bring in members of the House of Lords who are also registered as directors of Gulf Keystone Petroleum. This is how deep in the quagmire of filth and corruption we go in this country when we are claiming that this ISIL terrorists are, you know, as a forces person, I've always looked at it like this. if you cut out the logistical supply of any weaponry or arms, you will then reduce them to throwing rocks. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
How can you run a campaign without a logistical support? And that involves one thing: money. Now, this is our, as I said, terrorists and terrorism can be quickly diffused if you follow the money. That's what it is. Follow the money.
Well,
and if you keep it as simple as that, then you will find the filth, the political filth that's supplying these so-called terrorist networks with vast amount of cash.
Well,
and to get that cash, you have to hide it in how you supply those organizations with cash. And George Bush was excellent at doing that.
Well, the system is so corrupt that the whole model itself, with all this quantitative easing and all the monetary fraud, fractional reserve banking, and all the rest of the crap, the derivatives, put options, it's all waiting to explode in itself. They've printed more money in the last 2 years than the previous 300 years of commerce. You couldn't make it up.
Yeah.
And in order to keep this whole fraud glued together, they're making these companies up out of thin air that don't even exist. Yeah, they have to, because there's not enough real assets on the planet to cover their Ponzi scheme, which is the Western banking financial system.
Of course, and if you looked, like, as I said, I've become a bit of an expert when I look at companies and I can spot common directors and common addresses. So I use those three mechanisms to identify organised crime systems and how they can move vast amount of money.
It bugs me, Gordon. I mean, they throw in austerity, they force feed in austerity, ramming austerity down our throats. Our pensioners are freezing on our streets. I mean, the youngsters there's no real jobs. They've shipped all the manufacturing out. They're asset stripping everything just to keep this Ponzi scheme alive. And in order to keep the fraud and everything going, they've had to employ the most insidious people, as
like Andrea Davis.
And all
these are the people who, because of their Masonic links, because Andrea Davison's father was a master butcher, but he was also a Freemason, as what was seen in what was seized from her address was all her father's Masonic regalia, all his gold regalia that he had. So as I said, that's what turned my stomach in 2002, what I found and how it links to the British establishment. And as an ex-forces member, this is what drives me. It drives me that those people, those professional military people from all the armed forces, look to the people who issue the commands to go forward into combat and conflict with no understanding whatsoever of the filth, the scum, who are sending them to be, mentally, physically destroyed or come back maimed. To understand that these are the filth that are lining their own pockets. How can you have somebody like Tony Blair asking a charity company for £500,000 to give an hour and a half speech on their behalf? It goes beyond my comprehension.
Well, after these
that's why I fight. That's why I fight day by day to try to get people like yourself and your listeners to understand. In order to bring this system down, what's needed is to look at very simple targets. One, Anglesey Mining PLC, and to then use that as a catalyst to expose the greater filth that runs along with it. And that's why I'm doing it. I said, there's an opportunity for the people of Wales and the old mining communities to understand. They just shut the last coal mine in this country, the last one. Now, from what I believe on the news, those miners' pension funds a lot of them will be invested in these Ponzi scams. Do you understand? That eventually they will withdraw, but having lost a lot of their money, will then be backed up by government payments, which is robbing us twice. Initially, that the pension funds will be robbed. Secondly, that it will then have to be backed up by payments from the Bank of England, which then has to be paid for by the taxpayer. Do you get that?
Absolutely. The pensions are gone.
Simple.
Anyone who thinks they're going to have a pension in the next 10 years, forget it. The system's imploding. Your pension is gone.
Oh, they'll get a proportion of that, because what it will be is a payment from the Bank of England to cover the loss. So, as I said, Sir Steve Robson left Royal Bank of Scotland. That went from 800 million in the black to billions in the red in the space of a couple of years. And people say, oh, how did that happen? Well, the bank issued, and Sir Steve Robson and his 7 Freemason cohorts issued certain responses saying, well, it was a toxic debt. It was a toxic debt of unsecured loans that we made to multiple companies. However, let them name those companies, and you will find it was companies like Gulf Keystone Petroleum. Do you understand? It's that they robbed the banks from the inside. That these people who operate as directors and say senior executives of the banks, when you put it together, that these are the very instruments that are stealing the billions and passing it willy-nilly to their Freemason mates from lodges all over the world, because this is linked to Australia, to Canada, to the USA, to China, to all these mates of theirs who operate the biggest organized crime systems in the world. Now, as I said, anybody that wants to question it, my research material is more than welcome. So, say, let me have an opportunity, and they won't give me that opportunity. Okay. That's the point, is that you need a platform like yourself to get to listeners in and around your location. But what about the major media? And the only thing that I did with Anglesey was, even having had threats not to turn up, and by those people that organise it, threats against them and their families, I was determined to try to speak to a few people who will then carry that to their families and their friends, in the hope that one day the County Council of Anglesey will be held in an inquiry for prosecution. Well, and the Welsh Authority.
The people got to do it themselves, because it's painfully obvious that in order to keep this, as we mentioned earlier, in order to keep this full Ponzi fraud, the wheels turning, to keep the wheels greased, they've had to get the most filthy, corrupt characters in government in order to do it.
And then give them a title, right, like honourable.
Now, this goes all the way down into our courts. All the way. We never, we hope that there is a few good men, so to speak, left in pockets of these in positions, but I very much doubt it. We got to come to it, and there is only one conclusion, and that is we've got to hold them in account by the laws that's been set there for the times we live in now, i.e. common law courts. These mechanisms have been there, placed there within our system for the times that we live in now by our forefathers. The system's broken, guys. The system is smashed, and it can't be fixed, Gordon.
Well, it can't. Look, as I said to you, money just doesn't disappear. If you create 10 billion, that 10 billion goes somewhere. This is what people don't understand. When they say that the economy lost 50 billion or 3 trillion, it doesn't matter. Somebody had that money. That money was generated, and somebody had it. But nobody throughout their day-to-day lives is really interested. They'd rather watch, what they call it, Jeremy Kyle or X Factor or Strictly Come Dancing, because they don't understand what's happening around them. And it's dumbing down the population of this country to accept it day by day by day, without understanding how easy it is to bring these people to book. And that's what I'm trying to get to people, your listeners, is that if you start somewhere, keep it simple, because if you were to expand upon Andrea Davison, for one example, what you would see, if you followed it A to Z, is how it links all the way back to 788, 790 Finchley Road, and even senior members of the House of Lords. But nobody is prepared to use their time, or so-called to waste their time. They would rather switch the television on and watch something of a serial production like Coronation Street. I don't say that the people are stupid. We're not stupid. It's just where do you spend your free time where people are working their guts out to make a few quid? These people are stealing it blind, and they're laughing at people like you, and they're laughing at people like me, and all your listeners. And they think by extracting the urine out of us that they can carry on. Well, I'm trying my best to stop it. And if I've got help from people like yourself to explain it to people out there, the people who live in terraced houses and go to a community centre for a few jars, is that eventually you'll not be an individual. You'll be part of a collective that can make a change in this country for better. Bring these people to account.
Well, indeed. And this is the deal. We're running out of time, folks. Right? They've sold us, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren in this bailout, in this Ponzi scheme. We've all been sold into debt slavery for generations upon generations. But that isn't even going to work. They're looking to drag us into a third world war, to reset the whole thing. Look at history. This has repeated itself many times. They're looking to drag us into a world war in order to reset the books. What are your thoughts, Gordon?
Well, as I said, I go back to what I understand about the 3 missing nukes that were purchased by Tory grandees, which is part of the Andrea Davison story, is that as an ex-serviceman, I know, you'll see it's just been reported in major media that North Korea detonated a plutonium weapon. Did you see that? They've just done a test.
Yeah. I looked at the seismographs and it was a 5 point something.
Well, you've got 2 types of atomic bombs, and I work with the WE-177 access and handling through my GenTech GSE posting in Largo. Is that you've got atomic bombs, right, which are uranium-based bombs, and then you've got hydrogen bombs, and the hydrogen bomb requires a simple trigger mechanism, which is a secondary sort of an initiator using tritium gas to get tritium, and then you have that secondary effect, which is the more powerful. Now, I believe that the one that they tested is not one that was from South Africa, one of the 3 missing. I believe that was one from a B-52 that crashed, having had catastrophic onboard fire in its engines, and dumped them a load of these missiles, nuclear-headed missiles, off the coast of Somalia. And I believe that those were recovered by a guy called Conrad Billy Muller Rautenbach, who is a friend of John Arnold Breedenkamp. They operate together, and he's the one that orchestrated the 3 Tory purchase nukes. And that's where I believe that these things are being sold on the open market. And it goes on. So, as I said, is that these weapons could be used to start a 3rd World War, and who are we to know, the general public, of the truth behind that? And I'm just trying to get the truth out as best as I know it.
We have cases in the past where corrupt governments have been able to sell nuclear weapons. Israel was doing it in the 80s, I believe.
Well, they worked. The Israeli scientists worked at Pelendaba with Dr. Death, with Wouter Besson. And Wouter Besson was a good friend of Dr. David Kelly. And hence, that's where I believe the transfer of intelligence of biological and chemical weapons ended up in the sort of archives of the apartheid government, via Dr. David Kelly to Wouter Besson, Dr. Death, who worked at Pelendaba with Israeli scientists. These people get freelance support from governments in the filth of mass murder. That's why I do what I do, Darren, is that one day maybe we'll have a better, more accountable government.
Yeah, and they're not going to give it to us. And it's not going to work. It's not going to happen in the voting booth or anything like that, because as we outlined earlier, in order to keep this filthy system in operation, they've had to employ the most filthy characters.
Understood. 100%. You're 100% right, my friend.
It's just that I feel that we're running out of time. They're trying to get this Third World War kicked off. The money trail goes everywhere, including China, as we pointed out earlier. It goes everywhere. This whole system is global, and it is imploding. Cool. It's imploding now, right before our eyes. And
what's happening is that when it comes to my disclosures or anybody that sort of interlocks to that, is that they're starting to understand how simple you can confront these people. And this is what they're fearing now, is that people are picking up, even, anonymous North Wales or anonymous Mitchell Anthony, is that these people, when you can point out the forensic facts and documents, where to look, how to confront, keep it simple. Because as soon as you start to expand into the David Icke media sort of thing, he's part of the problem. David Icke, he's part of the mechanisms of protecting Freemasonry out of the Isle of Wight. This is how deep it goes into alternative media sources who are working with the establishment, with their establishment, in protecting the massive networks. And what better mechanism to use than to get people who have understood this to go on, the David Icke show or the People's Television. Then they can adjust to what has been found. Do you understand? Is that once they know what dirt, I nearly said it then, what dirt you've got on them, they can then alter their mechanisms from people who have found out the filth. Do you understand that?
What have you got on Icke, Gordon?
Well, Icke and Sonia Poulton had a fallout on the People's Voice. Sonia Poulton claimed that David Icke was silting money away from money raised in these 24-hour marathons. And what she claimed was that David Icke was not honest as to how much was raised and where that money was being fed. Now, Sonia Poulton contacted me, although we'd fallen out. She contacted me and said, "What have you got on David Icke?" So I set about doing dismantlement of where the money went in his organisation. And it goes to America. Now, there's a guy that works closely with him, is Sean Tabatabaya. You know that name?
Yes.
Now,
did they not fall out?
Pardon?
Did they all fall out? Is that the guy that was his partner with that People's Voice thing that everyone was chipping in,
Yeah,
they had a big campaign, did they not? And it was funded by the people.
Yeah.
I think, yes, his name is familiar with that, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Well, Richie Allen also interviewed Andrea Davison, as did David Icke. It turned round, and I got it on record because it got an MP3 recorded, is that David Icke said he was Andrea Davison's old friend from the 1980s. So this is where you have to understand, is that these are birds of a feather, and they flock together. Now, Sean Tabatabaya and his cohort, his husband or wife, whatever you want to call it, he's from America. So what you have to understand is that money for mass audiences gets fed and raised through certain companies. Now, I did that for Sonia Poulton. I showed her, and then I heard nothing more of it. But I'm working, or I've been asked to work with a guy called Dave Eden. Do you know him?
No.
He's an ex-Met police officer. We had a recent meeting with him because you probably know that we formed a company called Pandora's Box Investigations Limited, where Dave Eden and his advisor came up to see me, and I organised a meeting with the other directors of the company. And we've been asked to work closely with him to set about a series of productions, video productions, under what they call 5K productions. That's £5,000 to do a video production. And the ones that I'm going to do is Anglesey Mining and the Clogau Gold Mine.
Excellent.
Which should start riots in the street, especially if you're a coal miner or a miner, because it will be an expose on David Anthony Lenigas, who recently left all the boards of directors of all his AIM, which is Alternative Investment Market companies. He's left them. He's left them to focus on his Cuban company, where I think he believes himself to be untouchable. But trust me, I think with all the investors that are going to lose money on this magnificent oil find at near Gatwick Airport, there'll be riots going right to Parliament. I hope.
Yeah, I just hope we can
and I'll make sure I put the word out that the members of the House of Lords and the BBC were warned about this, all recorded. I'm not so stupid.
And I just hope people can be disciplined, because, again, they'd love to see total riots with people robbing off each other.
I don't want that. I don't want a glass smashed a piece of paper dropped in the street. I want these people to face the public for what they are guilty of.
Yeah, and the only way we can do that is mobilise and organise ourselves, guys.
And you're doing a terrific job there, Darren. Thanks, mate. Thanks
for
the invite.
Hey, thank you, Gordon. And checks in the post.
Another sixpence.
I don't know what I'm like.
Well, I've got to thank you and the people around you for telling me about. I should have got my RAF pension at the age of 60, not like the blinking British Legion told me 65.
Yeah,
because it was your friends, your close friends, that gave me that advice, and if I hadn't known about that, I would have been sat poverty struck as I have been for a long time.
Yeah, fair play. That was Tommy.
And, thank him sincerely. You know, I'm going to pop down there. We're going to have a pint tonight.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Hey, thanks a lot, Gordon. And
it's a pleasure, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing a great job, and all the best. And we'll speak to you soon, man.
Which is the money trail to the 3 missing nukes. Simple. Because if you look in the highest forensic evidence, document-wise, you can get is Hansard, which is a record of questions and answers at the Prime Minister's question time. Do you understand that?
Yes, Gordon. I just need to let the listeners digest what we're going through, because you mentioned nuclear warheads, and because we've gone straight into the deep end, and we're going to stay in the deep end for this interview, is to go back and listen to Gordon's previous work to get a fuller grasp of what we're talking about. They'll have to go back and do a little bit of research. But if you can give them a little bit, Gordon, then we'll crack on.
All right. So let's do the reference to Andrea Davison. Now, I traced certain companies to 788, 790 Finchley Road that were linked to my partner's fraud, to which she and over 800 other South African victims lost a collective total of about $113 million US. They were the victims of an orchestrated capital venture fraud, and the origins of that came out of two addresses in the city of London. One was 5 Harley Place, London, Harley Street, London, and the companies that were formed there, to which my partner was the victim of, were previously registered at 788, 790 Finchley Road. So what I did do back in 2002 was I traced that common origin address of 5 Harley Place, Harley Street, London, and I dismantled the directors who control that address and their companies that they control. And I found out that there were 113 companies operated out of...
Happens sometimes,
Well, it's British Telecom, and your server. And I found, even with my pay-as-you-go EE phone, which used to be orange, is that sometimes I'll get, you have another voice message. And that message was from 2 months ago. It's just been delivered. So, EE is not the best provider when it comes to updated software for passing on messages that are left on your answering machine. So you probably find you'll get it in about, June.
Yeah, most likely, mate. Yeah. But, no, so we've had a release of a little video from the anonymous group in North Wales. Now, that seemed to have done the rounds a bit, and I know that you would like to, and I would personally like to thank the lads from Anonymous for putting that together. It's
brilliant, and I'd like to thank them and pass the message on. I passed it on to Mitchell Anthony as well in Anonymous London, who runs the Aspire network, because they were the ones that gave me an opportunity to put it on video through Aspire when I did the 1st of March, St. David's Day chat outside on Trafalgar Square, and then we went on to the BBC. So that's been a catalyst for documenting forensic evidence where it was recorded. I went into the BBC and they've done nothing. And I know why they've done nothing, because it implicates their very top executives. And I'll tell you why. Is that when I went into the BBC and I pulled that travel bag with me, inside there were 4 large files. One of them was the Andrea Davison court case copy of one of the presented N265 full disclosure files. And in there it lists her whole network.
Welcome everybody to the show. We got Gordon Bowden with us again. We're lucky to have him for an update. It's been a few months since he's been on, so it'd be great to catch up. How are things, Gordon?
No, fine. I'm making a lot of money doing this promotion work.
Oh, I don't know whether to go there or not.
Just laugh it off, pal.
Oh, just so hey, listen. All right, then hands up time. Just so the just so the listeners and a bit of a confession. There was a misunderstanding yesterday where I was waiting all day for Gordon to phone me, but there was no phone call. So I went to bed in a jolly mood and woke up this morning. I woke up this morning and threw a few toys out of the pram. But hey, listen, these things happen, and it resulted in I said, "Hey, what we got to effing pay you now? We are what?" So yeah,
I'm really looking forward to this, mate.
I've given Gordon a lashing, and also I got to thank David as well for patching it back up again, because I did wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and that's what
of money laundering mechanisms and addresses in the United Kingdom and Vancouver, Canada, British Virgin Islands, Panama. What it does in the court case file is disclose the wider network to which she operates for. Do you understand?
Yep.
And that's what Andrea Davison took the defamation case out for. She didn't want it in the public domain, because once it goes in the court, it's a registered public document, and it stays there within the court forever. Do you understand? In their records file.
Yeah.
So what they hoped, or what she hoped, and the people that she worked for, was to eradicate all that information from any public record, to bring forth prosecutions for other people who she works for. And they are the higher echelons, including many members of the House of Lords, MPs, who operate within the wider system of Freemason lodges. And that's where it goes. It actually can be proven, like Lord William Hall. If he wants to contradict it, he can do, because one thing I'm very good at is forensic document recovery. And Lord William Hall is a liveryman at Painters Hall in 8 Little Trinity Lane, London. And 8 Little Trinity Lane, or it used to be called Painters and Stainers, and it's a Masonic lodge. Do you understand? So he's a liveryman at that address, and out of that address are the directors of Anglesey Mining in their companies, including Phoenix Mining PLC, or say there's many companies to which Ian Cuthbertson is a director, and many other, Dinesh Kumar Varma of Anglesey Mining PLC. So that's the way you trace. If you can then trace individual directors who are running virtual mining companies to the same address, and then expand on that by recovering all the other companies that operate out of that Masonic lodge, what you then see is a generalized picture. Do you understand?
Yes.
You see a bigger picture than what is presented other than one company name with a board of directors. What you see is a network of companies, all with the same board of directors, who are playing musical chairs within a group of companies. And all they're doing is moving in and out of companies from a common address. And that's how I said, once you understand the mechanics of how it operates, it's very easy. And this is what they don't want in the public domain, because there would be riots in the streets. Now, I don't want riots in the streets. I want these people to face the same prosecution as if they catch somebody urinating in the street. It needs to be exposed for what it is, and it's £1 billion organised crime. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oof, and a bit on the side. Now,
more than a bit.
Now, for the listeners, because we went through quite a lot of information there in a very short time. Basically, because I understand it, and most of the people listening to it would understand it, but for the people who are hearing this for the first time, this Andrea Davison woman and how she connects and how it all went to Anglesey Mining and how it all intertwines with these Masonic lodges is key in understanding how the whole fraud is used to asset strip the nation, basically, or
right.
And now, could you just go into the little mechanics to help people understand how we have this woman, Andrea Davison, running around. She's been found guilty by a court of law. She's giving interviews all over Europe. She's connected highly with Peter Hain, provable fact, the documents there.
And Lord Douglas Hoyle is the main. Lord Douglas Hoyle is the link then to the 17.8 million